Hello and welcome back to Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Hey guys, today I have an interview with Neyda Honda. She is an intuitive healer and a channeler. She channels the energy of the goddess Ishtar. She works from an approach in reading that has to do with the Thoth tarot. It is based in Egyptology. And we're doing a series on purposeful journeys and how people find their gifts and how that gift is then expressed through them. So I asked Neyda to come here today to talk to us about the direction she took things in, because as everybody knows, if they've been around me for any length of time, I'm a celestial and angelic practitioner, which means that I go way more towards the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot and that Pamela Coleman Smith's interpretation of the tarot, and the subconscious elements that are contained in the imagery is the one that I resonate with most. I am familiar enough with the Thoth tarot, but like it's like we're on mixy things. And it's the same thing with Egyptology, is that apparently I have not had a great many lifetimes in Egypt. In fact, I don't know of any. And I do believe in reincarnation, that we do keep coming back until we've learned the lessons that we're meant to. But you're going to have different affinity with different things. And one of the things to keep in mind is that every belief system that is formed both around divination and our approach to divine was formed at a time when people did not have a particularly sophisticated understanding of things like neuroscience or the universe or energy itself and what, things like matter. And so most of the belief systems were trying to convey a universal truth to connect people to a universal energy. But you almost want to think of that as like the seed that is planted, and then from it grows different offshoots of a plant relating to that particular energy. And so Neyda she's in a different branch. She's in Egyptology, and I, of course, resonate the most with the archangels, and I practice a form of Enochian magic. It is actually not Enochian magic, but celestial and angelic magic is the only form of magic designed to help combat and defeat evil. And so it does work with the archangels, and so I'm always going to be working with the figureheads from that particular belief system. Having said that, there is no right or wrong answer. There is only simply your answer. And Neyda has a different answer than I do. And Ishtar is the goddess of things like fertility and also of actually strategy in war. And there are a bunch of Ishtar encompasses both the light and the dark aspects of the feminine divine. But what Neyda is in contact with when she is channeling is a form of the feminine divine. And you will be drawn towards the answers that are right for you. And as you go forward, remember, you can like perform a cafeteria style a compilation of your own beliefs. So I asked Neyda here today to talk about some Egyptology, what is believed in that, how she came to her own journey. And with that very long introduction, let me get the housekeeping out of the way, and then we'll get to my guest. If you need to book me for a private reading or a life coaching session, you do so at therisingmoon.com. The only way to book me, you can find me at Cronecast at the Rising Moon on my YouTube channel. You can always find me here at Logical Magic, Examining Esoterica. And we're going to talk to Neyda now, and Neyda's going to tell you where we can find her. Neyda, hey, thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really appreciative of your time and having me on here. Thank you.
Neyda, tell me a little bit about your socials, because like I did learn recently that we're supposed to put this at the top, not the bottom, so that people have to listen to them. Hello, we have you captive. Keep listening, please. Neyda, where can people find you for your own services?
So for right now, I am at www.guidedcounsel.com, and that's COUNSEL. And I've just had to revamp my whole social media, which will be launched this new year. I've been guided to go into a completely different direction. So I'm reinventing myself as we all evolve.
Well, and you have to remember that you can start out in one area, you glean all the information that you're meant to, and you go in a different direction. And that like we're never at an arrival point in our purposeful journey. Your purpose may encompass one thing for a 3 to 4 year span, and then it moves on to something else. So Neyda, you're also a reader, and you use a Thoth-based tarot. Can you tell me about the tarot that you use? Because it's from a Canadian tarot reader, is that correct?
So it's a YouTube channel called Spirit Science. And during my process of learning everything esoterica and the history of the ancients, this person, his name is Jordan, created Spirit Science and made everything in such a very compact and very easy way to understand. So I got hooked onto it.
Mhm.
very nicely done. And he created this tarot card, which was Thoth based, has Kabbalah, astrology, all the sorts. And it just really resonated with it. So I use those cards. And you can visit spiritscience.com and you can see the cards there. They're beautiful cards, very well done. And the imagery is beautiful.
Okay, so the Thoth Tarot was created by Aleister Crowley, who was Jacob and I talk about him a little bit in the tarot episode. Aleister Crowley was a very famous occultist and spiritualist. He died like early in the I'm sorry, the 20th century, I think around 1937, but I'm not positive at this particular time. So you're working with the Thoth interpretations, again, ever so slightly different, but still valid. Remember, whenever you're doing any form of intuitive work, you will be guided towards the answers that are right for you. And once you have like encompassed a meaning in your head, it becomes part of an encyclopedia or a lexicon within your head. And even if no one else is like, oh, I associate this card with meaning that, if it has held true for you in your own readings, then it is an equally valid form of interpretation because our answers are individualized. This is very much an a la carte type of belief system. Can you tell me about the draw towards Egyptology? Because really briefly, I'm going to cover what I know about Egypt because it's not a great, well, I know a lot about the actual history of Egypt, but in terms of the religious practices within Egyptology, I only know the figureheads and the goddesses and the gods. People to try and keep in mind, we're talking about an incredibly long span of history in world history. And in fact, I believe I read something not that long ago. Cleopatra was born closer to the invention of the iPhone than she was to the buildings of the Great Pyramids. And she's like, but like, so we're talking like, is she 200 BC? Is that correct? So
About. Mhm.
yeah, right. It's like it's within about 2,000 years of right now, and the pyramids predate that. So they were built a very, very long time ago, meaning that Egypt itself had a lot of chance to go through many changes in their culture and in their approach. And as a, for instance, one of the things that most people know about Egypt and Egyptology are the burial practices. And we all know that most of the pharaohs' tombs were robbed and that only Tutankhamun's and a couple of others were found entirely intact in the Valley of the Kings. What most people don't realize is they were robbed by the Egyptians themselves. They plundered their own
Mhm.
pharaohs to take away the wealth. So whereas there was a belief system in place, it was not treated all that reverently over the span of time. And so there is corruption in that power structure as well. But there is an avenue towards connection that is available towards people trying to hone and have an affinity with their personal power, which is what all belief systems are about, connecting you to your divine source. So can you tell me, when you started going towards this, when you were drawn towards the tarot that's based in the Thoth tarot, what happened for you? What started to open up that hadn't been there before?
So it was basically, I love history, and just after coming out of the dark night of the soul, just getting more involved with understanding, metaphysical neuroscience, and I just went deeper and deeper into meditation. And then through my meditations, I contacted different entities. One of them was Ishtar, and then before I knew it, I was like really connected with Thoth. I didn't know who he was really. Like I knew obviously the Emerald Tablets. I downloaded the Emerald Tablets PDF, which is available free, on Google. And from there, it just kicked off. And Thoth is also Hermes, right? So it's
The
Hermes
messenger.
reincarnated.
Sure.
So for those that aren't really aware, but it's basically he's a historian that reincarnated time after time after time and just incorporate all the life lessons and what you should be learning. And ever since I've read the Emerald Tablets, it activated something in me in which everything is now guided in the manner of with Thoth's guidance, which is very awesome because I have been taken on journeys to the pyramids with him through meditations, and he's shown me some really cool things about the pyramids that I look and I'm like, oh my God, does Matthias Stefano know this? Because I haven't seen it yet. And, what about Robert Edward Grant? So that's the curiosity is what really exploded my connection with Thoth um, and things about Egypt as I'm learning. And mind you, am I a guru for Egyptian history? No, it's not like on my off time, I get all geeky and start, watching Gaia on everything Egypt. But I get this information, I look it up, and it's validated. I'm like, okay, this is legit. This is legit. And then I ask, what should I do with this information? And those are the steps, and that's part of the transformation I'm going through is getting more in touch with the Egyptian side of it, the historical, the lessons being learned, how to be applied now as we're going into 2024.
Well, and it's a very rich culture and an ancient culture. And please remember that even though, like, we're talking about spanning back literally thousands of years, the desire people have to feel connected, to feel a resonant joy within their life, that is unchanged. And so there are, throughout history, there have been belief systems trying to help people connect with that. You said something that's really important. I want to kind of shine a light on it, because people will have these experiences. And unfortunately, this is like, we have to do the red flag, be careful, proviso type of disclaimer around it. Is unfortunately in channeling, you can actually receive false messages from spirit attachments, from non-human entities I've talked a little bit about. When you reach into another space, you have to be very grounded, you have to be very protected to make sure that you are only interacting with things that are coming to you for your best interest in conjunction with your highest self. And Neyda mentioned something that is very important if you believe you have begun to receive spirit messages or are channeling, which is that you need to be able to double check that information for validity. And if you did not know it beforehand, but it came to you through a channeling session and you are in a grounded and a protected space, then the chances that you are actually connected with the expression of that universal energy in the form of something like Thoth, which is what really goes on, is valid for you, because there are things that will try and mislead you. There are trickster energies, and there are spirit attachments, and there are things that are just trying to feed on your energy. So always try to take a grounded approach with whatever you're receiving. And so what Neyda did, where she started looking into things, and it's like, that I didn't know, and yet that's what was told to me, and that I didn't know, and yet there it is, and that's what was told to me. Those are one of the ways that you can kind of anchor things into a more grounded practice and make sure that you're receiving just the messages that you are meant to. So can you tell me a little bit about the emerald tablets? You've mentioned them several times. What are they? What do they contain?
So they're basically a set of written scripture from Thoth that was created many, many, many years ago, in thousands of BC, year ago, I don't remember what date. And they are indestructible material, completely indestructible. They are made out of household items that people have been trying to replicate. And when people have put out the recipe on the internet, somehow they disappear, one of those things. And it's basically the Egyptian commandments, per se, on how to live life, is what he wrote based on the what they would call the underworld and the temples underneath. So what he learned from each god and what he was supposed to take back to humanity. So the emerald tablets, there's a part missing of it that they have not found yet. Mm-hmm. And but the information is available for us, what has been found. And it just talks about way of life, about being kindness, about showing your light. Kind of gives a little bit of prophecies as well as to what we're experiencing. As we all know, what we're experiencing now is just cyclical. What we're going through right now is pretty much almost a mirror image of what happened in Atlantis. So we now are more aware of what can happen, and we can control it moving forward if we choose to as a collective. So the Emerald Tablets kind of prophesize that a little bit, and it's a great, if you read it raw, it's going to take you a few times to understand it, just the way it's written. But again, every time you read it, there's an activation at the cellular level that happens, some sort of light activation code. And then before you know it, you'll start having lucid dreams. Then you'll start realizing, oh my gosh, I'm getting this extra oomph or intuition about how to direct my life, per se. I mean, you're not going to be talking like thou shall know thyself. You're not going to be talking like that. It's just your inner guidance is going to be heightened just a little bit. And Billy Carson, he is all about emerald tablets. So if anybody wants to know anything about the emerald tablets, I mean, this guy is the Egyptian guru on YouTube, on everywhere. that he can just dissect it to its granularity. And that's where I also get my information regarding Egypt, is watching him, because again, it's that validation and going back to making sure, are you truly channeling the right person? I set boundaries all the time. As a psychic medium as well, I don't want to be speaking to all these other people that have transitioned all the time and give that open, space. I set boundaries, say, if this and that, then we can connect. Same thing with channeling. Make sure that you stay grounded, and make sure that you have to set boundaries that you will not accept under no circumstances trickster energy or negative energy or anything of the sort. And that also helps out as well as you start to ground and get, more accommodated with channeling per se.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the idea of setting boundaries. And like for my own practice, what I have to do is I clear pretty much constantly. Sometimes I'll clear between clients. I personally have a salt bowl, which is blessed and empowered water and blessed and empowered salt and multiple essential oils, and usually cranberries or lemon peel in the room with me whenever I'm reading. And these are props that you channel your energy into to enhance your protection, essentially. All magic is about channeling your personal energy into something to add for protection. I also do say certain psalms for protection every single day around being protected. I clear in between clients. I use sound bowls. Please remember that the results that you get, it always, as I'm always saying, look at it like you're performing surgery. You don't want to be infected by something that you don't, when you create an opening, you want to make sure that only what you're asking for is coming into it. And that is one of the ways that we're talking about setting boundaries. Whenever you think that you're in contact with something that because they will try to intrude upon your thought process, is like sometimes just a very firm no and choosing to go and do something else can help as well, because there are trickster energies out there. Let's talk a little bit about Thoth as the messenger. Hermes is also the messenger. And then the Archangel Gabriel, which is what I'm connected to, is the messenger of God. And so we're all in contact with these messenger elements. And does that mean that the stories are false or the stories are true? Actually, it's both. Because all stories are told to us to try and help us connect with a universal energy. And the real truth of what something is not something we can really comprehend in the limitations of this form. And so we are brought multiple narratives, and you will be drawn towards the narrative that has the truth for you. And because it was developed through practice, often through thousands of years, there is a literal truth in terms of what the connection is connecting you to. The goddess Ishtar is actually also the goddess Persephone. They both have a connection to the underworld as well. When you start, you study one thing, and then you take a step back and you study another, and then you study another, and you start to see the ways in which there is commonality and how they are all telling the same stories, but using a different narrative to do so, frequently kind of developed within a geographical area to reach the people of that area. So different belief systems will have different figureheads, but they're actually tapping in to the same energy. So Ishtar and Persephone, and then Lakshmi is one of the goddesses in the Hindu religion that's also the goddess of abundance and fertility and prosperity. And that it is all part of the feminine divine. So in Thoth, you're connecting to the masculine divine, and then in everything having to do with Ishtar, you're connecting to the feminine divine. Your messages are targeted towards, is it predictive energies or is it healing energy?
Oh, that's a great question. So I do events, local events, and I do presentations where it's a collective message to the collective, which prophesizes what's coming up, in the next month and next year. And at the end, it's a full-blown healing session for whoever's present at that time. So it's kind of just to, it's sometimes, when I have these, when I go into trance and I give these sessions, like in my own awareness, I'll be like, I don't think these folks should hear this. And they're like, no, you are here to provide a message, and therefore you should, proceed with a message. And so I think part of like the softening up of the message is the meditation, is the healing afterwards, so they can leave in a very positive note, feeling empowered and feeling like, hey, this has to happen. You know, these changes were a long time waiting, and it's now time, and you're going to be okay if you choose to be okay. So it's both. I incorporate both at the same time, depending on the audience, right? It's audience based.
That's a very important distinction to make as well, is that because actually Gabriel is frequently represented by the Judgment card, but also by the Tower, because that's one of the cards for divine intervention. It's a card for epiphanies. And everything comes through a human vessel and then is honed and shaped into a message that the people receiving the message can hear easily. That's how fate starts playing a point within all of this, and how the divine plan comes into play as well, is you are guided towards the things that you can hear and the people who can say things in the manner in which you can hear them. And now Neyda and I probably, like, we don't have a lot of similarity in the way that we approach things, but that she's doing essentially the same sort of work, which is helping people find their basically energetic and emotional damage within, to connect to their spirituality, to connect to their highest self, to connect to their personal power and their divine connection. And it's why there's no real competition in this particular area of the world, because whenever whoever comes to you is meant to come to you. And they might stay with you and then move on to a different healer when they need a different message, because they've learned that lesson. They need to close that book and they're going to go and pick up their next lesson. And that's how it works, is that we never are stealing one another's clients in this industry. It's why most people who are tarot readers, like Karen Rontowski and I are good friends, and we've been on each other's podcasts, and we're both tarot readers, and Jacob and I are both tarot readers. It's never an issue of competition. It is you are drawn to the person who can phrase things in a way that you can receive the message that you need to hear to continue on your divine path. And when we're talking about the different avenues that takes, like, think of it as standing in the center of a very large circular room, and there are doors surrounding you all the way around. You'll be drawn towards the door that you're supposed to walk through. You will gain all the knowledge that you're meant to within that particular room, and you might remain there for the rest of your journey, or you might, as Neyda referred to before, learn something from one room and be like, oh, I need to close this one, and then move on to the next, when you take a new direction with something. When was the first time that you felt like you had received a channeled message, Neyda? Because you mentioned the long dark night of the soul, which involves like overcoming our darkness, understanding our shadow self, achieving ego death, and usually a not insubstantial amount of depression has to be overcome as well. It's why it's called the long dark night of the soul. But one of the things that frequently starts making the sun come up or the light be shown back into our souls has to do with, like, in Britain, they sometimes refer to it as being struck psychic, which sounds a little tiny bit violent, but honest to goodness, it's a very normal thing, is that people will walk into it feeling like, yeah, I've always been a little bit intuitive. They will go through a difficult healing process, often involving a lot of trauma, breakups, and really traumatic ones frequently are involved in the long dark night of the soul. And then there is a moment of connection, and it doesn't last for a super long time. It's usually about 2 to 3 weeks. And then you go back into almost another dark night of the soul as you are exploring what this is meant to do. But it really is almost like somebody jumping into the pit, into the void with you, being like, here's the light, follow me. It's going to be a rough journey. And that's how it works when things start opening up for you. And expect some false starts and some false messages and some difficulty in honing them and separating the wheat from the chaff as well. So when was the first time that you felt like you were really in contact, and what happened?
So I'm just going to reiterate this: the long ass dark night of the soul, because it is the longest journey ever. Years before you finally realize, what did I just go through? Am I clinically depressed? Am I at the point of suicide? Like, what in the world is happening to me? Right? Your whole life deteriorates. But that's another story. That's another podcast. So as my one phase of the dark night of the soul was ending, and I had time for myself due to the circumstances, I was really following Abraham Hicks and Bashar. And I was like, I really resonated. So I resonated with Abraham Hicks because I needed the self-esteem, the confidence to just put one foot in front of the other. but I resonated with Bashar because I'm like, oh my God, this guy is next level. This guy is like, I totally resonated with him. And then he started talking about permission slips. And I'm like, okay, I want to channel like Bashar, like Mr. Daryl Anka. I want to channel like Esther Hicks. Why not? They say everyone can do it. Then I have all this time. Let me do it. Shit. What else? And it happened. And as I was building my mediumship, which is the first thing that really came in strong, and finally getting over of hearing my own voice and then just developing the other, what do you call it, clairvoyances, the smell, the sound, and what have you.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. I'm always declared something, all the clairs. And then I got this one message, and it was a Pleiadian. And I'm in the middle of a meditation. I kid you not, I swear. And I'm getting all this information, and he's talking to me. And I'm like, hold on, I have to record this because this is just too much information. And so, they listen to you. If you ask them, please hold, I need to write this down, get something to write, or I need to record it, they totally listen and they wait. And I got my phone, I turned it on, and I was repeating everything he was saying, and I was obviously asking my questions out loud. Anyway, so I had like an hour and a half talk with this Pleiadian, and he told me all about my history, where I'm from, why I'm here. Like my purpose was just dropped on my lap. So, and that was one of the things as I was going through the long ass dark night of the soul. I was like, what am I here for? It's definitely like to be miserable. Like that blows. Who wants to sign up for this, right? Like just to come to this earth to like suck ass, it was terrible. And he just boom on my lap, dropped my purpose in life. So I'm like, okay, this was really weird. Again, I'm just starting to get into my mediumship, and reaching out to people, helping me, develop these things. And then YouTube. I didn't even know how to spell Pleiadian. I had only heard of reptilians at the time, and so I was like, whatever, I'll just do a search. And I'm searching, scrolling up on YouTube, and I saw a person that looked like, I know this is going to sound judgmental, but like normal, not like superly eccentric or, out there with all these beads and, stuff. Just looked like a normal dude. I kid you not, this guy said verbatim what my Pleiadian friend told me. Verbatim, as if he was in that script with me. And then I said, I'm in. I will be the next Bashar. Period. That's it. I dig it.
Just for people who don't know, Palladians are part of the starseed narrative, and that is like, again, is any of this literally true? Not precisely, no, but it leads you to truth. And it's like, how can both of those things be true? It just is, because what is the actual literal truth is, again, beyond our comprehension. And so if you're drawn towards the starseed narratives, even though they are not literal narratives, they still have answers for you and guidance in this. You have to remember that when we're channeling, it is a form of universal guidance that is going to hand you a script that you can read from that will give you your direction. And it doesn't have to be true for everybody. It just has to reach a universal soul truth for you, which is why we get different answers, and everybody can be right and nobody's solely right. And you get the answers that are meant to lead you down your purposeful path. The truth of the matter is everything is so much more complicated than we believe it to be. And the structure of reality is both incredibly simplistic because it all breaks down to energy, and then also insanely complex in that we will have a uniquely tailored avenue or path or teacher coming to us to help us with our journey. And for Neyda, it was multiple things involving the Egyptian Thoth, Ishtar, and then also the Palladians, starseed narratives as well. People need their messages of healing to have a framework and a context, and that's what all of these narratives are. they take a healing energy and they put it into a form that you can then ingest it in, which is language for us. In order to have comprehension, we have to have language. We have to have something that will, if there could be the most brilliant Russian speaking channeler in the world, and it would all sound like gibberish to me because I do not speak Russian at all. And it's a little bit like that, only don't think geographic language, think of it as soul language. And so your soul will resonate with the language that you're meant to be hearing. And it can be part of your evolutionary and your reincarnation journey, although some people don't believe in that, and they may be right. Remember, more than one thing can be true at once, and you can have both things. You have weird duality within a situation as well, meaning that just as a for instance, you can lose somebody after, like, taking care of them through a long, long battle. And it was very, 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 very difficult and draining. And when that person leaves the mortal coil behind, you can mourn and grieve and then also feel tremendous relief and freedom. We are able to entertain a weird dichotomy within, like, one thing can be true, the other thing can be true. They don't cancel each other out. And when we're walking a spiritual path, that's what we need to remember, is what's true for Neyda is true. What's true for me is true. What's true for you is true. And it doesn't cancel out. That means Neyda's wrong and I'm right. It doesn't work like that. You are drawn towards the answers for the universal energy that is trying to speak to you. And so you found multiple people to help you on this path who helped you guide you towards the answers that were going to help you develop your gift and hone it to the best of your ability, correct?
Yes, and I think one of the biggest things which you hit dead on, one of the other components is surrendering. Just surrendering to and being open to whatever information you get. So I was wide open. I'm like, I am willing to learn and implement whatever resonates with me. And to your point, I wouldn't necessarily be connecting with elementals because that's not my interest. So I wouldn't be talking to a tree, or pets. I'm not the medium dog whisperer. No, However, I know that one of my past lives, I was an intergalactic fighter. So I am very much in tune with that side of the thing, the intergalactic stuff, which is why I connect so much with it. Why, the pyramids are spaceships and energy centers. That's why my connection is there. So the information that one would get would be one that they are most comfortable and willing to receive. And if it gets overwhelming, you can always say, you know what, this is too much. How about be a little bit more gentle with me? Because they don't know. They don't know what's right or wrong, good or bad. They just know energy. And if you're pumped up and you're excited to get more energy and they feel like you're ready, they're going to dump it on you. But if it's too much, you just say no. In my case, I'm like, give me more. Like, just slap it over. And if it gets too much, I'll let you know. And that's why things happen. I think it's because that surrendering just accelerated my growth process so much to where a year from now, I was in a completely, like, you wouldn't recognize me a year ago, in a completely different state. But I have put so much energy into healing, facing my trauma full on, accepting, surrendering, and saying, yes, give me that information. That's what accelerates so much. And if you really want to. And the thing about truth is so true because, like, you and I can have an argument, but unless there's a third person involved, we're going to have different perceptions of our argument, of how it went, of how you perceived it, how I took it, how you took it. So the only person that would give us an actual true account would be the third person. So that's why everybody's perspective
and then it's still just
is
their
true.
Then it's still just there.
Yes, it's still skewed. It's still skewed. So the only one is there would be source that's up above.
We have something called a witnessing consciousness within us, and it is unique to us.
Oh.
So our experience is for us. One of the things I read not that long ago was that a different version of you exists in the minds of everyone who has ever met you. And it's like, well, that should be a little bit intimidating on top of everything, because it's like, depending on, like, throughout a healing journey, we've all been different versions of ourselves. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry for the person who's stuck with the version of me at 26 as their only version of me. But that's what we're talking about, is that truth is both personal and universal, and they may not match, but that doesn't negate either of them. And so what we're all trying to do is find a way to be the best version of the energy that they were meant to be. The frequency or the vibration is what we're talking about. Is that, and do I talk to trees? 100%. I do an elemental form of magic that calls in the corners and there are archangels in charge of all of those different corners. It's east for air and the archangel Gabriel, west for water and the archangel Raphael, south for fire and the archangel Uriel, actually, because it works with divine fire and celestial and angelic magic. And then the north for earth, which is the archangel Michael. And so there is a corresponding angel, which is what I work with, to every element. But that doesn't mean that there isn't validity to every other form of magic. It's just that that's how magic is expressed through me. And that what Neyda's talking about is how the universal magic and the universal guidance and the help that we have available to us is expressed through her. And that's what purposeful journeys look like. Don't expect your purposeful journey to resemble like the dog's like, that's right. Because when it is
I know, right? Like, word up. That's right.
We will have answers that are almost tailor-made for us, and they may actually involve answers that give us a community or a tribe. If you haven't found your tribe yet, kind of keep looking. Now, every now and then there's someone who's an outlier, and I am a little bit one because I'm entirely self-taught on everything, and I'm not a follower of anybody other than, I guess you could say, like Quaker Farm Camp was the person who was the entity in my life that taught me how to connect to the divine, because the Quakers don't talk in any form of meaning, and I don't practice the Christian religion, but I have a very obvious connection to the divine. They would sit around in the woods. And on meetings, you would just kind of sit there and try to connect, and you weren't supposed to say anything and stuff, just divinely guided. And that was one of the ways that I think I started kind of connecting to nature, spirits, and potentially fairies, by the way, because every magic practitioner I've ever told that to is like, oh, okay. Do you know what you did there? It's, yeah, I know what happened. Is that it almost certainly drew a spring fairy. Or a summer fairy. It's one of the ones that has to do with growth and with expansion and with abundance. So I probably...
And they do exist.
Yes,
fairies, dragons, gnomes, all of that. They all exist.
These are all stories. This is the mythology that is built around energies that people interact with that are very, very real. Now, my only thing with fairies is like, please, please, please don't work with them unless you understand them, because they're complicated and they do not follow human rules. They play by their own rules. And they expect something in exchange. And like one of the people that I watch on TikTok who talks about fairies was like, oh, they can absolutely love the heck out of you and still mess up your life because it would be interesting. It's like, that is exactly it. That is the encapsulation of what working with fairies can be like, is remember that they play by a completely different rule set. But this is what we're talking about, is that there are, I don't want to say infinite numbers, but it probably is an infinite number of ways to connect to your version of the universal truth that your consciousness can process and understand. And that's what Neyda's talking about in the long, dark night of the soul that goes on forever. Why is it so, by the way, it will frequently follow a period of extreme loss, where everything you thought you knew about your life and your place in this world is stripped away from you. And then you are cast into this long, dark night of the soul that can last, it lasts longer than anybody ever wants it to. Like, everyone's like, oh my God, the long, dark night of the soul, it was the worst 6 months. And it's like, oh, be prepared, because you're just on break from the long, dark night of the soul. If you think it lasted 6 months, it's a long process. And you will kind of look at it.
Sometimes you're not even aware of it, right? You're not even aware that you're in the night until finally, shit hits the fan and you're like, oh, and then you take the time to evaluate. You're like, wait a minute, this has been happening for like X years. So you've been in it for a long time.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's almost like the polar night of your entire existence here, where the sun goes away and you are cast into your own darkness to understand yourself, which is really what the long dark night of the soul is. But as one of the things, again, it gives you that glimmer of hope, that reconnection to your divine self is usually the part that opens up. And then, like I said, it's almost like it's a relapse into the long dark night of the soul as you go through peaks and valleys, as you continue to climb out of it. Getting to know yourself on a true level, getting to be able to see yourself, as we were talking about with perspective, is a long journey. because how you view yourself is not how another might view you. And that doesn't mean that their view of you is more valid than yours, but that rather the truth is probably somewhere in between. And if you add more people into that, you're a bigger and more complex picture than you think. You only see your things from the internal view. And part of what the long dark night of the soul teaches you is to start looking at yourself from an external position. And when you do that, you are opening up your consciousness to other external forces, which include things like being able to channel. Now, we started out trying to talk a little bit about Egyptology, but we kind of haven't. and so, like, let's revisit that a little bit. So there's Thoth the messenger. Ishtar is one of the goddesses for love and fertility. So is Isis, but she's like love and marriage. And do you, when you are doing your own protection work, what deities or deities do you call to be protected?
I'm not gonna lie, I call on everybody. I call on ancestors, universe, source, God, just everyone, just to make sure. I mean, because I don't know, like with everything else, you don't know what you're going to experience or see at that moment. So might as well just call the whole crew in. So it's not very specific to anybody. And so far it's been working, it's been working great for me. Just calling it all in as a collective, because it's what we are. Even when I've experienced my death, I heard one voice that I knew represented all. So that's why I just call everybody in. I don't have anybody in particular. I don't have archangels. I don't specifically call out Isis or anybody. Just all hands on deck. I'm going in.
And like, again, we're letting the process that is right for us. What changes has this brought in your relationship to yourself? Because that's the thing that people aren't really prepared for as they begin to open up to spiritual source, to receiving messages, is the way you relate to yourself undergoes a sea change, and it's both good and bad. It really is. It's like you're dealing with, it's almost like who you were before is like looking at pictures of a first cousin that you don't remember that well. That it really does undergo a tremendous expansion. So how has this entire experience changed your relationship to self and your place in this world? Because that's what we're talking about with purpose, is trying to find that.
So you hinted at it in the very beginning, where you fall apart and you don't know yourself, and then every person that you meet is a projection of you, is a mirror of you. So when they say something to you that you're like, I'm not like that, well, is that your ego saying you're not like that? Or let's look behind it and see, are you like that? Because their perception is their truth, right? And you're a mirror of that person in some respect. So therefore, I must be projecting something that gives them that perception. In that, it's like just constantly being self-aware and not taking it personally, letting the ego know, hey, I get it. But if they said that about me, let me look into that. And it could be just them. It could 100% be just them. But I need to also be aware and put that into consideration. So that's putting my ego aside, which is number one. As you start healing and going through that self-awareness, because it's all about awareness, you start losing people that you can connect with. I've always had only like 5 friends since high school, and I still have them as my friends. And they, for whatever reason, they've always said I was, nutso and out there, whatever. So I was the weirdo. I was the gonzo of the group, which was cool. So me going into this wasn't a surprise. However, I know that there's a limit to what they're willing to listen to. Like, I can't have a conversation like I am with you about, ooh, aliens and this and that. I cannot have that conversation at all. So I am rebuilding my tribe. I am rebuilding my tribe for collaboration, to have that, to be able to be the more authentic version of myself. Don't expect to find love, because your standards are going to change. So when you're looking for love right after a dark night of the soul and you're feeling lonely, it becomes not feeling lonely because you don't have a partner. It's because you're feeling lonely because you don't have anyone to have these conversations with. That's where the loneliness comes. It's not the love factor. So you'll learn how to be okay with being on your own. And that's so empowering, when you can say, it's nice to have a mate is a bonus in my life, but it's not. I know that I'm still growing and becoming a better version of myself. And that to me is my number one thing. And if there's someone there that can participate and be my complement to that, then hey, I've got it made. That's an extra bonus. But if not, I'm cool with that. And there's a lot of broken people who, and I'm not going to call them broken. I'm going to retract that. They're not broken. They're going through their journey and they can't see that yet. And I didn't see that when I first saw you. I was like, oh my God, like, whew, I've been alone for so long, and to continue to be alone, but it's my definition of what being lonely and alone was. But you redefine that. And that's what happens. I'm telling you, it's dismantling of who you were, re-evaluating who your friends are, what you can share, and then having that constant need to find a tribe where you can, once you start having these conversations and you're talking to, different entities and divinity and what have you, you really need to find people who are also on their journey, but they can understand you and not judge you, because we live in a world of judgment.
Yes, we do. Actually, releasing being judgmental is one of the things to connecting with your higher self, is understanding that everyone is at the point in their journey where they're meant to be, and they may be stumbling around a little bit, and they're not broken, they're injured. We're all trying to resolve our energetic and emotional injuries that are usually part of our formative trauma, or simply the trauma that is incurred by being a person in this world, which can be very difficult to be a very feeling or empathetic person in this world where people don't always treat each other with kindness, compassion, and respect. And one of the parts of this journey towards a purposeful existence is understanding that everybody else will be on the path that they're meant to. And so if you do have friends who are like, you're talking to aliens, have you taken your meds today? Listen, they're entitled to that viewpoint. And is it literal aliens? Like, again, it's a universal energy trying to communicate with you in a way that you can receive that information. And that is what a journey for your soul is about. Don't judge other people's connections. Don't judge the narratives that they are drawn towards that contain the stories that will help them uncover the parts of their soul that they're trying to heal, that they're trying to connect, that they're trying to bring to purpose in this world. Because when you are living in a purposeful energy, when you're really trying to do the things that your soul came here to do, things like having a partner are no longer, like, it's a nice thing, but it's not your focus of your journey. It's like it's a dessert on an otherwise great banquet that is your life. Is that it is when you are really in a resonant energy of trying to connect to, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? It becomes not unimportant, but you become your focus in a way that is healthy and loving and strengthening. And therefore, who's with you at all times no longer determines your personal happiness, because you have connected to your divine self. And so you never feel alone, because when you are connected and fully integrated within, you have the guides, the guardians, the ancestors, the angels, the aliens, or whatever beings are trying to bring you those truths. And again, can we ever really know what these are? No, not in this form. That is why have respect for everyone's answers. Even if it sounds fantastic or fantastical to you, it is bringing that person a resonant piece of energy and of healing that can connect them to a soul's journey. And soul's journeys are always about trying to participate in our collective, in trying to find the ways that we can make a difference. And one of the good things about going through a hideous, long, dark night of the soul is that you then have the ability to understand those who are in that part and to try and offer them more light so they feel less alone. And so that their dark journey becomes a little bit brighter, because you're able to bring them the hope of things changing. Please remember, wherever you are on this journey, things will change. Just hang in there. Keep going towards healing. Treat yourself as worthy of being healed as well. And it will bring you greater connection to the idea of love that is not from an external source, but from your divine source and from your higher self. And that is the connection that we're all trying to make. And when you make that connection, if you are meant to be in a healing or an educating profession, something like channeling can open up where you have messages that other people need to hear, and you will be guided towards the ways to phrase them. You are, this education that we receive on this journey gives us the ability to phrase things in a way that that person needs to hear it. And we've all had that happen. We've all had something repeated to us over and over again, and then somebody says it in a slightly different way, or we're in a slightly different energy, or at a different point where we are going towards change, and you hear it and you're like, oh gosh, there it is. It's been Eureka. I found it. It's been there the whole time. And the universe will keep trying to bring you that truth over and over again. Remember the people around you, the things they share with you, they're trying to get you to see a part of yourself. They are as divinely inspired as, people who do this for a profession, is that they're trying to bring you a piece of the puzzle that is you so that you can complete yourself and you can be whole. And that way you are not as concerned about having a partner, but when you're whole, you are then part of the great universal machine and working within that machine to make things better, to make things more resonant, to connect people to their spirit, to their soul. There is almost nothing better than being connected to the idea, to the energy, to the presence of the divine within your life, no matter what form that takes for you. And when you hear divine, do not think the God of the Bible or of any religions. It is the universal energy of creation, and it is trying to express itself through you. And a soul's journey, a purposeful journey, is all about finding out how that expression, whatever radio station is supposed to be coming through your transistor, how that expression is meant to come through your unique soul, from your unique perspective, and to try and have as much respect as you can for everybody else's perspective, because the answers that they have are resonating with them at a soul level. And it does not matter if it's like, yeah, I'm on board with that. If you're looking at it like you think you're what, don't worry about that part. They are receiving a universal truth in the way that they are meant to hear it. And that will be true for you as well. And the people that I really have a great deal of compassion for are the people who cannot believe in anything beyond themselves. It's hard for them to find that connection, that purpose. And again, it's not necessarily really about having faith as much as it is about having connection. How has your life improved since you've been able to connect, Neyda?
Wow. So my relationship with my children, it's always been good, but now it's at a different level. Just because I can be a child just like them, because I've remembered how to be a child and have fun. And I think just because I'm living life in the present moment, manifestations are coming through. I have a list on my wall of all these things I would like, with no expectation as to how I'm going to receive it. Some people tell you to do it, be very detailed about it, and others say just, put it out there. I do all of it just in case, because you never know. Like I said, all hands on deck, but without the expectations of when and how. I just put it out there. I would like this. And then the manifestations are definitely coming in more so now. I know they're going to be coming in 2024. Before I didn't have that. I was always in lack. I was always in lack of everything. Lack of self-esteem, lack of money, even though I had a comfortable life, lack of love, lack of everything. Now it's completely different. I feel abundant. And just that mindset, and it's not even the mindset. Forget the mindset part, where they teach you, oh, it's all about your mindset. Yes, that does help, but it's the feeling. And this is something that, that Dr. Joe Dispenza, Deepak Chopra, they all teach. It's the feeling as if you already have it, with the mindset that provides the heart and mind coherence that really opens up the doors to manifestation and law of attraction, and not to worry about the karma. And that was one thing I was really stuck on, is like, oh, I hope that asshole gets his karma or her karma or whatever, right? You have to let that go. All of that also works against you, because you're putting it out there. And law of attraction states what you put out there comes back to you and sometimes magnifies. So, I'm very I'm very careful of what I think, what I say, and I have a higher tolerance for people who I would be easy to judge. For those people that are closed-minded or who are quick to say, oh, you're weird or whatever. In my mind, I'm like, it's cool because you know what? Not this lifetime, hopefully, next lifetime. But I send you some compassion, and guess what? I'm planting a seed. There's my fairy dust. I'm planting your seed, my seed right there. And you'll remember me when the time comes. When the time is right, you're going to remember, I remember some girl, who was acting really weird, told me about this. And I was like, get off the drugs. But, it'll start developing. And that's what we're here for. We're here to plant the seeds for the next generations. We are the way showers. That's what our work is right now. Is to plant the seeds for those folks that don't see it yet. And it's cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have a thick shell, but I still get hurt. Some things happen. I still get triggered. But how quickly do I recover from the trigger? That's the key. And I am so grateful that I may get triggered, but immediately I find the humor side of it. And that's how I know I'm on the right path to healing. And the more I know that I'm validating my own path to healing, the more connection I will have with divine, with source. And that to me is like so exciting. And I'm teaching my daughter energy healing work. Unfortunately she doesn't have the attention span, but let's do some quantum touch healing, and my son's trying to pretend like he's meditating with me, and like, okay, just close your eyes and whatever happens, is instilling those baby steps that we didn't get, especially as a Gen Xer. I don't know about you, but, we were latchkey kids and left outside, to survive.
Sincerely, and I'm Gen X as well, is like one of the things I saw on TikTok the other day was somebody talking about how Gen Xers, we all have a story about how we were almost kidnapped, and we'll laugh the whole way till they're telling it. And it's like, oh my God, we do. Like every single one of us has like some kind of like flirted with like, being a headline type of energy, being found dead in a dumpster. And we'll laugh so hard about it because it was not abnormal. We are a generation of people who were raised by the first generation where divorce became commonplace. And so people didn't know how to co-parent, and they didn't know what to do with children who were not, overseen by somebody at home the whole time. And so we're feral. Let's put it that way. We were free range. And so most of us has been engaged in trying to raise ourselves ever since, and to socialize ourselves in ways that like, it's a very individual generation, because we really were just like, here, out of the nest you go. Oh, you don't even have feathers yet. Flop. Like we really were launched into independence at a very young age. All right. Well, Neyda, that was Neyda Honda, who is an intuitive healer, and she channels Ishtar and a couple of other entities and energies to try and help people on their purposeful path. Now, we take a very different approach to things. And in fact, like everybody knows, I bag all over the law of attraction, that like it's not possible to like never allow yourself doubt and fear. And, you have to heal your stuff before you can constantly choose to be like looking on the bright side of things, and that it can lead to emotional repression and unfortunately compounding damage. So remember to heal first, and whatever you go towards, then you will go towards the answer that is right for you. No matter whose answer you are drawn towards, it is the right answer for you. And it may be a stage in your journey, or it may be the place that you will reside for the rest of your journey. But be open to all possibilities, and more will come to you more easily. And that is what trying to live in a purpose is about, is you open your doors to the universe and you say, bring me what is meant for me. And you know that some of it's going to suck inside out, man. It's going to hurt, because it really is about confronting where your wants and desires have been holding you back as much as anything, because we want safe lives and our souls want purposeful lives. And sometimes those two come into conflict. And so there is an inner conflict to be resolved within a soul's journey, within a purposeful journey. Thank you so much for joining me, Neyda. You want to say again where people can find you, please?
Sure. Guidedcounsel.com, GUIDEDCOUNSEL, because I am guided by the Galactic Federation, the Big Council, That's where I get my messages from, to deliver to you all in hopes to help you get on your journey and become the best versions of yourself as you can at the moment that we meet.
That sounds great. Thank you again for joining me. I'm Alane. You can find me at therisingmoon.com to book me for a tarot card reading or a life coaching session. You can always find me here at Logical Magic, examining esoteric. I have a Patreon coming on January 15th is when it's supposed to launch. Don't hold me to that. It keeps getting pushed back because I have too much to do sometimes. But I will be here week after week trying to bring you more information about how to find your path, how to find your purpose, how to heal your trauma so that you can live the best life that you can have, find the love that you deserve, and to simply be happier within your own existence, which is what all of this is about. You'll be happier when you are more purposeful. You will be happier when you understand yourself more. You'll be happier when you have confronted and healed and released your trauma. You'll be happier when you no longer compare yourself to others. You will be happier when you step into your resonant purpose. This has been Logical Magic, examining esoterica. Thank you so much for joining me. See you again next week.